Thanks again for staying with ANN7 Prime with me, Cindy Mabi. The city of Ekurhuleni launched several activities to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Chris Hani's assassination. Hani was murdered outside his home in Boksburg on the 10th of April 1993. The SACP, COSATU, SANCO and civil society converged for the celebrations.
A wreath-laying ceremony, a remembrance walk and an exhibition were among the plethora of activities organized in Boksburg to commemorate the 25th anniversary of anti-apartheid activist Chris Hani. In attendance were government leaders, politicians, community members and the Hani family.
Let me also thank first the SACP for preserving the memory of Comrade Chris. If truth be told, had the Communist Party not done this, our first commemoration was April 10, 1994, a few weeks before the elections. Comrade Chris would have been forgotten.
We came here to recharge, to recommit ourselves, to make promises that what Comrade Chris Hani stood for.
Ekurhuleni Mayor Mzwandile Masina reiterated that the government had purchased the house of Chris Hani to declare it a heritage site. He thanked Dimpo Hani for sharing memories of Hani for the cause.
In 2018, the city of Ekurhuleni under SREC submitted the nomination of Chris Hani's house, which we have purchased, to be declared as a national heritage site. We have commenced with our work to build a family museum. And thank you, Mama Hani, for continuously sharing with us memories of Comrade Chris. And I'm sure that South Africans will be happy once we conclude this monument.
Lindiwe Hani, daughter of Chris Hani, thanked the people of South Africa for their support throughout the years. She also paid tribute to the late stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela.
You guys have carried us, the Hani family, on your shoulders, in your hearts, and in your prayers for 25 years. I am here today because of that overwhelming support. We love you and we thank you always, South Africans. May God bless South Africa. This has been a difficult and extremely sad week for all of us, but especially for the family of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. My thoughts, love, and prayers are with them.
The Department of Arts and Culture was also in attendance in honor of the fallen veteran.
Comrade Chris, at a very early age, showed great promise as a bright young person with an extremely keen mind and a profound sense of perseverance.
The nation still mourns the loss of Chris Hani 25 years after his assassination. The South African Communist Party says it's important to keep his memory alive for the future generations of this country. Totlego Khosilenzwe for ANN7, Ekurhuleni.
And joining us in studio is Advocate Ntuse Lebebe, political analyst. Udo Fruza is an independent political analyst. Then we have Jacob Mamabolo, the South African Communist Party Gauteng Provincial Secretary General. And Botsang Muilo will join us on the phone line. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us. 25 years it's been, Mamabolo. How would you say that the legacy of Chris Hani beyond the wreath-laying ceremonies have been, or the legacy thereof has been preserved?
Well, firstly, thank you very much for the invitation and good evening to all the viewers. Indeed, today, the South African Communist Party, with our alliance partners, led the rest of the millions of our people to remember, commemorate, and celebrate the life of Umkhonto weSizwe, Commander, Chief of Staff, our General Secretary, leader of the ANC, Comrade Chris Hani. As a South African Communist Party and, of course, our alliance partners, our people, on a daily basis, we live the life of Chris Hani. We emulate the theory and practice of Chris Hani, his ideas, what he believed in. We implement some of the ideals and the things that he wanted to see happening. We take up campaigns every year. We have the Red October campaign championing issues, housing, health, fighting poverty. So I think that we're very much proud as the SACP that we have never failed since his death to make sure that his legacy lives on and the ideals that he dedicated his life, the cause that he dedicated his entire life to, is with us, and we do exactly what Chris would have done if he was alive. Today, he will be with the party with us, doing exactly what the Communist Party, the rest of the alliance partners are doing.
But the Communist Party, and one could argue that even the ruling party comes from a point of compromise. And this is what Chris Hani and Umama Winnie Mandela had criticized in the negotiations or the convention of a democratic South Africa, that it is probable that under Chris Hani, we would not have seen the kind of lackluster attitude towards policy reform that will deal with injustice, that will deal with the blacks being marginalized, and that will deal with the economy only being in the hands of the few.
You know, let me just say to you that, you know, in the days on the eve of Chris Hani's death, there was an article that was published by the London Sunday Times based on a report that was issued by the then intelligence operatives. They issued a very, you know, wild allegations, unfounded reports that were trying to alienate Chris Hani and Mama Winnie Mandela from their organizations. And they made all sorts of fabrications, massive disinformation campaign, trying to create an impression that they've always been breaking ranks with the African National Congress, the entire movement. And I think we must not do that. Chris Hani, Comrade Winnie Mandela, until the last moment of their lives, were loyal members of their organizations. When we raise, and even myself, everybody, when we engage on issues within the structures of the movement and on any democratic platform of our structures, that does not suggest breaking ranks or standing on the fence or turning your back against.
I don't think I'm doubting the loyalty of the members or the memberships. Yes, but I just want to say that there is also that cloud of conspiracy or suspicion that Chris Hani did not die at the hands of the right wing. That it was because he was so vocal and fearless in his fight for equality that he may have been eliminated even from the party ranks. Before you respond,
that must be corrected.
Let's get a view. Let's get a view from Botsang Mwelwa. He's a political.
That is completely wrong.
Yes, no. You'll get your opportunity. I just want Botsang to.
I want to correct that.
Botsang, just go ahead. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Just particularly on that, be it a conspiracy theory or not, but it is on record where there had been suspicions that Jalus Walus was not necessarily representing the right wing. There had been infiltrations within the tripartite alliance.
Good evening, Sin, and good evening to the NN7 family. Look, it has become evident over years, and the South African Communist Party is supposed to be best positioned to represent their former Secretary General well and the commander of Mkhonto Sizwe. It has become very clear to the nation and to us that Janus Walus was not representing the extreme right-wing movement. He was either representing the then National Party or infiltration of the National Party and the CIA into the ANC. And I'll explain why this happened. The protection that Janus Walus and his counterparts and compatriots regarding the whole process of murdering Mr. Hani, it was protected so much by the then apartheid government, it went on to be protected until today by the ruling African National Congress. Now, it may have not been the political party, the ANC as a whole, that protected Janus Walus, but it may be some element within the tripartite alliance who collaborated and or connived. The ANC was infiltrated by the Askaris, it was infiltrated by the National Party and the CIA, it's on record, and it may be those people said, listen, and the viewers. This happened after Chris Hani has managed to conduct and lead the Mkhonto Sizwe very militant people to say, let us not continue with the arms struggle. The leadership of the African National Congress, in collaboration with the leadership of the SACP, have agreed that they should go to the negotiation table. And the moment he had agreed to that process, to respect the negotiation process, he went around the whole country from Turfloop University right up to the Eastern Cape, addressing various internal cells of MK on why did he arrive at the conclusion that they should heed the call by the national leadership. And he gets murdered. In my view and opinion, Chris Hani was murdered because his ideas were not going to die. If Chris Hani was alive today, and looking at how the ANC conducted itself with the SACP from 1994 to today, he would have defied them. He would have fought, because some of the things he had predicted and said before he was murdered are happening today, whereby we see they're supposed to be communist, they're supposed to be socialist, and African nationalism people are living a large life of capitalism.
Just hold the thought, Butang. Let's just also engage Uda Khuza. I'll come to you, Rema Mabolo, and then really, Bebe, just in your view, whether the self-fulfilling prophecy of what Chris Hani had called the elitists being separated or divorced from the concerns of the masses is what we are seeing in current day politics.
That is the base. Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
That is indeed the base. What happened was also that Hani was extremely popular. He was the most popular leader of the ANC SACP COSATU. And that hugely popular thing, he didn't see eye to eye to certain ANC leaders who did not like him because of that. They felt threatened. And he was the natural heir to Nelson Mandela. So these points all turned against him and counted against him. So the assassination was certainly a political assassination, nothing personal. They killed a person, yes, but there was nothing personal. It was not a right-wing operation at all. Janus Valus was a hired hand, and that is proven beyond doubt. So that is the real reason that he had to be killed, because he was, by then Moscow had fallen, the Berlin Wall had fallen, the Eastern Bloc countries were no more there, so the Soviet Union was no more there. So he had to change. He was not protected anymore.
Should the investigation not have been extended? I understand that the TRC process came and gone, but the fact that if you look at the build-up to the democratic 1994 elections, that there had been an opportunity to hold to account the sitting ministers, if not president at the time, who under his watch, Bui Patong happened, under his watch 1993, Chris Hani's murder happened, in the interest of justice and closure.
I think it will be appropriate to have another TRC whereby people will come clean, and the truth is supposed to be told to the majority of South African people and the families of the former freedom fighters. You know, the issue of Chris Hani is that the exclusion and sidelining of Chris Hani is that, you know, he was so patriotic. And Chris Hani knew that for them to join the MK, it was the issue of fighting for the land, nothing else. When the ANC was formed, it was formed to fight for the land. So now, Chris Hani was very strong. He believed that, no, the land need to be returned to its original owners, which are indigenous Africans. So then now, there was negotiations which was choreographed in a manner that at the end there are a lot of compromises that most of the land is not going to be returned back to the indigenous African people. The land now is going to be open for a willing buyer, willing seller. And Chris Hani was against that. So even after his death, that is why they managed to deal with the situation, because Chris Hani was popular among the people. So it was going to be a serious crisis if indeed the thing was not organized internally within the Tripartite Alliance. Then we're going to have a serious problem. We're going to go into a civil war. So it shows that indeed there was a motive within the Tripartite Alliance to deal with this Christian who believe on Pan-Africanism, who believe that the land supposed to be taken back to the African indigenous.
Yeah, Advocate, maybe just to allow Mama Bolo to respond. In that, Chris Hani was the one who didn't shy away from uncomfortable confrontations, the issues about land, the issues of redress, and the way to go about it, not in this whole consultative back and forth process, that the SACP, under Blade Nzimande, when he was still Minister of Higher Education, there had been an issue and which is in the Bill of Rights, which is in the constitution of the ANC, to provide free higher education. And that became a stumbling block. So if you're saying that you're honoring the legacy of Chris Hani, give us examples. What has the party done, not only in policy reform, but to also live up to your communistic or communism ideals?
First, let me just clarify the issue that I needed to clarify earlier. And I hope I'll have enough time to do that. The first thing is that as the South African Communist Party, and I guess the people of our country, and the point was well made by my colleague here, one of the reasons why we are saying Janus Walus must not be released until he tells nothing but the truth. Now that Clive W. has passed on. And it's precisely because we don't want speculation and suspicion and casting aspersions on people and going for conspiracy theories. We're a scientific organization, we work on the truth and facts. We want Janus Walus to tell the truth. If some of these conspiracy theories and all that could be confirmed, Janus Walus tell us the truth. Who were the people that were behind the killing of Chris Hani? We wouldn't celebrate to just get the matter thrown around and cast aspersions on people. That is why we also want an inquest into the death of Chris Hani. That is why we have learned from the Timor inquest that actually there are a lot of things that we could get to the bottom of if this matter is reopened. One of the reasons why I was very quick to intercept you on conspiracy theories is that Comrade Umama Winnie Mandela, there was an article coming from, the same article that came from London, with one journalist suggesting that Comrade Winnie had announced that Chris Hani was killed internally. When investigations were done with this journalist, did you talk to Winnie Mandela about this issue? He said, no, I left messages. I think at that time it was on an auto page. They went to the auto page to check. Did you leave messages for Winnie Mandela on the auto page? It was found that nothing. So we mustn't cast this type of aspersions. Janus Walus, through a proper process, for example, an inquest, will get us to the bottom of the matter and the truth. So that is why we shouldn't be entertaining speculation.
All right, Mr. Mamabolo, in the interest of time, yes, let's come back to the modern day society. I just needed to clarify that. And I think one of the things we can do to help us is to call for Janus Walus to tell the truth, instead of throwing speculation. Now, back to the issue of one of the things that we have experienced as the SACP is that throughout the entire history of the Communist Party, the leaders who are still living are being condemned in favor using those who have passed on. Those who had passed on when they were still alive, they themselves were being condemned and being said this type of things, you are not loyal to a communist cause, and so on and so on. We must not use our martyrs and our heroes like Chris Hani to condemn the living. Dr. Plato Nzimande, the first minister of higher education. I was the president of SASCO during my student days. I can tell you that many of the demands that were put on the table, for example, a demand that there be special state organs like a Department of Higher Education to focus on the sector. Under that ministry, the department has created massive opportunities for Africans, black, working class children to access higher education. Even the demand for free higher education, which is an old demand that even from our generations before that we've been calling for. The party and the Comrade Plate as minister have always supported higher education. What we refuse as the party is populist phrases and statements that are not done honest to the cause. So we mustn't cast as Comrade Plate or cast aspersions on his position on higher education. That free higher education would have not been achieved if it were not through the work of Comrade Plate Nzimande, not him alone, with the collective of the ANC, the entire movement. So we must not isolate Comrade Plate and seek to cast aspersions on him as a single leader of the SACP. That the enemy tried and failed to do, and it must not be repeated. Well, it is essentially not to necessarily draw parallels of the caliber of leadership of Chris Hani and what we're experiencing today as the SACP. The relevance of the SACP has also been questioned, Botsang, in the sense that are they able to go it alone, that they essentially remain the deputants to the ANC and not being as vociferous or radical, if you will, in dealing with the issues of injustice and redress?
Cindy, I am on record having have said the SACP of today, it may have not changed its policies, but they are not as radical as they would have been under Chris Hani. Otherwise, if they were, they would have not led the African National Congress to prolong and drag social injustices and transformation to a point where we are today. This would have not happened. That's one element. Another element, I do not want to get into the praises and things and criticism at funerals and commemoration of the fallen heroes. But I want to state for the record that we should not forget that's why I'm against the TRC and another inquiry regarding Chris Hani. A criminal offense record, a criminal case has to be opened, not just in Quentin the TRC. The TRC came and it failed. For the SACP to continue to bank on the fact that Janus Walus will wake up one day and tell the truth, it is very clear after the death of David Lewis that Janus Walus is not going to do that. He knows that if he does that, he will secure his freedom and probably leave this country. We cannot bank on that as a nation. The government of the day is supposed to open a criminal investigation into the killing of Chris Hani. There's a lot of elements that are in place. I know that the previous Mr. Mamabolo had said we should not talk on speculations and insinuations, and I agree with him. However, let me remind the nation that after Chris Hani was killed, immediately after in that week, there were statements released by the apartheid government forces on how the PAC APLA forces had assassinated Chris Hani, and that's on record. And that was, if you recall, Cindy and the listeners or viewers, before Chris Hani was assassinated, his counterpart in the PAC, the APLA commander-in-chief, Sabelo Palmer, was assassinated after they had met. And then people were saying, due to their meeting and their disagreement, which is not true because they had agreed on the continuation of the armed struggle, then the white settler government went on to try and put the PAC and the ANC against each other using their military forces and made insinuations that the APLA forces had killed Comrade Hani when actually it was clear that a white person of foreign nationality.
But I'm just in the interest of time, I hate to interrupt you, but you're saying that the SACP in essence is a shadow of itself or what it used to be. Your view and your response.
That also will have to be correct.
No, you'll get a response, but very briefly, we're out of time, Odo.
Sure, I agree with you. It's a shadow of itself. It's got no strong leadership at all anymore, and it's therefore quite weak, making a lot of noise though. The other thing that I would like to let me talk and finish. It's my way to talk now.
We can't make wild statements. Where is the support?
The other thing is also the.
No, he's backing that up. If he was substantial.
Why has Joe Klanchla never been asked what was going on? The then head of intelligence of the ANC in those years. The other thing is also what I would like to query is the close cooperation between London and Pretoria in those years, as my colleague on the left actually mentioned. And then, why was the Chris Hani murder not fulfilled completely with only by bringing in Clive Derby-Lewis and what's his name, Janus Walus? At the same time, it was very interesting that these things never really came out in the open, and that it needs to be.
Okay, so we have a lot more questions than answers. Advocate Lebepe.
Yes, what I can say is that I will move. With the fact that the SACP currently is not championing what is supposed to be championed. For example, the SACP was supposed to be very vocal on the issue of land. The SACP was supposed to be very vocal on issues of free education. The SACP was supposed to be very vocal on issues of the current disparities, the highest level of inequality, the highest level of poverty and unemployment among indigenous African. You see, so the SACP is not in charge. Actually, the SSCP was supposed to be directing policies in the ANC. Because it's a school. We regard the SSCP as a school of thoughts. We regard the SSCP as the one supposed to be championing these policies and how should these policies can be implemented. Now we see opposition parties now forcing the ANC on policy direction. You see, Chris Hani fought for land. Mama Winnie was very vocal on issues of land. They fought for land. ANC, when it was formed on the basis of fighting for land. When they abandoned the armed struggle, Chris Hani was not happy about that. You understand?
So you're saying that the Ray Mamabolo's response is more on the semantics and saying that he's not going to go with populist statements like radical economic transformation, I imagine you mean. But the essence is, what's your response to the SACP, criticism around not being vocal or vociferous enough around issues of redress?
You know, firstly, I must welcome this criticism, and I'll explain why the point is making. But I've got an issue with what I think he has tried to give some examples. I agree with this criticism because as the SACP, we welcome criticisms. He says the party is a school supposed to help the ANC champion radical policies, transformers, so and so on. But I think the issue here is that he may not be aware of our positions on land, on free education, on what he called disparities of today. But I can assure you that the South African Communist Party is the center of all these issues. It might be that perhaps we were not become demagogic and more populist in the manner that we raise the issues, but let me assure you that on the question of land, on free education, on unemployment, poverty, and inequalities, the South African Communist Party has been the forefront of clarifying these issues. You can imagine if the party